All right. Well, hey, thank you everybody for coming out this after lunch. That's brave of you. I'll see if I can kind of keep at least half of you awake. That's the goal. I've had a lot of people asking me about the title of the talk. You know, what is it you were talking about? It's almost like you're talking about creatives like they're family pets. And, well, I mean, come on. I mean, okay, they're not cats because nobody likes cats. They're not dogs because dogs are really dumb. So I actually like to think of creatives more like maybe horses. You know, they're animals that are pets, but they're also useful. They can take you to places. Or cows that can sustain your family, right? So we're going to talk about the proper care and feeding of creatives. For those of you that don't know me, this is my team at BYU Photo. I'm really grateful to work with these amazing people. We have 3 full-time staff and then anywhere from 7 to 8 to 9 students every year. And I couldn't do any of this without them. They're amazing. And I know a lot of you were able to visit us out in Utah last year and got to know my students. You understand why we're successful, and it's because of them. So I'm in an interesting position because I've got 27 years as a photographer at BYU, and I've got about 20 years as a leader of photographers at BYU. So I'm in both camps, and I kind of see both sides of things. Really quick, let's just do a poll here. How many of you manage creatives? Raise your hands really high. Good, about half. And how many of you would consider yourself a creative? Good. Okay, so this is the right audience. I can pick on both of you. The thing about, and I'm talking specifically about visual creatives, which most of us are, right? The photographers, the videographers, the graphic designers, the people that just really are the lifeblood of the university. Leading creatives is a challenge, though, isn't it? What do you feel like is some of the biggest challenges of leading creatives? Go ahead and raise your hand. Let's hear some answers. Yes?
Allowing them to be creative outside of photography in a way.
Oh, allowing them to be creative, not even just at the job, but also outside. Good. What else? Come on. They're creative. They're challenging. We know. Derek? The investment of time. Explain.
Right? You can't just put them in front of the computer and give them a camera. You have to invest in them, you have to mentor them, you have to help them grow.
Yeah, they definitely require some care and feeding, don't they? Good.
I think also like going on with like being creative, but also being on brand, but also letting them like kind of feel out the creative style and tone that they have, and just kind of incorporating it. I think as just us as professional creatives, we kind of have the ability to do that. We've been doing that for a while, and just having a student come on and doing that for me is kind of.
Yeah, and it's especially when you're mentoring a student, especially you do see that there's so many different facets of creativity and being a creative in an organization that is inherently not creative, right? So there are a lot of challenges, and we really want to dive into some of those things and how we can help creatives be more successful in our university environment. I've been very fortunate as a photographer to have Carrie Jenkins as my boss. 25 years she's been my boss, and she's led our department. Former magazine writer for BYU Magazine, and was brought on to kind of lead the university communications team, be our public spokesperson for the university. And I love Carrie, and I'm so sad because she just retired a couple weeks ago, and I'm telling you, it's hard because I've come to love and respect her, and a lot of our success also comes from her leadership. So we want to lean into some of the things that Carrie taught us. Carrie is the sweetest and the nicest person you could ever meet. Never says a mean thing about anyone. Is a grandma, and it shows that love. But we had a talk once. Back in about 10 years ago, I took over as the director of the photo department. And I was a little frustrated because I like photography. I like taking pictures. And I was getting frustrated because I was going to these meetings and doing these budgets, and I was doing all these things, and I was just telling Carrie, I'm like, Carrie, I miss shooting. I want to shoot more. And Carrie didn't say a thing. She walked up around me and went and closed the door. And I realized this is not good. Carrie then came and sat down, and she told me something. She looked me in the eyes and said, Jaren, don't you think I'd rather be writing magazine articles? Which is the most direct thing she's ever said to me in my entire life. But she went on to explain, a leader's job is to put their people in a position where they can succeed. And then she looked at me and she said, that's the job. And I'm telling you, that was a pivotal moment in my life. And I will always remember it and be grateful for that conversation because she set me straight. That was what I needed to do. I needed to learn how to help my people succeed. the first thing you need to do is you need to have love. Now, I know that this is a word fraught with problems in an organization, right? I'm not talking about romantic love. If romantic love is your leadership style, there's an HR session down the hall. Go check it out. What I'm talking about is actual love. Loving your people, being genuinely interested in them as individuals, happy as people, having their families be healthy, them having what they need to succeed. That's the key to being a great leader, is loving your people. Not for the result. The result is secondary. And we need to learn how to love in the right way. The second thing that I think is key to being a great leader is not making any excuses. And I've talked about this last year, but I just want to just remind you the destructive power of an excuse. And you guys are working in a university environment, it's really easy to blame somebody else. The creatives blame the management, right? And that's all I hear. And then I talk to management and they blame the creatives. That's all I hear from them. Here's the problem. Once you make an excuse, once you blame somebody else, you have taken away the ability to change the situation, to improve it, to make it better. That's not leadership. It's a cop-out. So if you're going to be a great leader, you need to learn how to live and lead without excuses. You need to have the belief that you can change any situation and make it better. Now, you cannot force people to do what you want them to do, but you can invite them, you can entice them, you can give them an example, you can love them. You have more power than you realize as a leader. And as a creative, same thing. You always have the power to make the situation better. And once you make an excuse, you have lost that power. So we talked a little bit about this, really. What are the creative challenges of leading those creatives? There's a lot of challenges, right? Creatives are special. I mean, really special. But creatives are also special. And it's worth the effort to try to manage and lead creatives in a way that will make them want to blossom and grow in our environments. First of all, creatives, they create and maintain the brand, your brand's visual identity. It is really, that visual identity, why is that so important? So let me share. What is it that creatives do to create that visual identity at university?
Instant recognition.
Yeah.
You know where you are.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People need to be able to look at your videos or your photos or your graphic designs and automatically know it comes from the university. This is official. This is professional, right? That's really part. What else?
Helping alumni maintain connections and for the entire university community, will be building knowledge and relationships for years to come.
And there's a visual language, right? And we need to continuously speak that same language. We can't switch it up on people. They'll lose that connection with the campus. I think it's really important because when I started as a photographer at BYU, our main role was to try to make great stories and great photos and great videos to entice newspapers to run those stories. Our whole goal was to get somebody else to tell our story. Well, the internet really changed everything, and social media completely changed everything, right? Because we don't need the newspapers. We don't need the TV stations. We have social media. We have a direct access to an audience that actually cares about us. And the thing about that connection, though, is social media is not words. And I'm sorry for the writers. Words are dead. Okay? The visual language is images. That's how we communicate with our audiences, is through images. Videos, photos, graphic design. The campus communication is led by these creatives. They are your main communicators. Your main and your direct link to your future students, to your alumni, to your staff and your faculty, even to your administration. So we really need to look at creativity. And the truth about creativity is this. It's hard. Do you agree? And most people that don't do it for a living don't appreciate that fact. It's one thing to be creative. I mean, I think it's funny because creatives we kind of hoard and we're like, no, we are the master of creativity. We own that. We don't. You could be creative in any job at a university or in any business, right? I mean, look at Enron. They had a lot of creativity in their accountants, right? creativity is a human experience. It's not just our domain. The difference is that a visual creative has to be creative every day. That's the hard part, because it's exhausting. And if you're worried about other things, it's super hard to show up and be creative. It's extremely difficult. So let's dive into these creative challenges a little bit more. I'm going to break it up and go through it. But it's low pay, inflexible work environment, no voice in leadership, death by micromanagement, you guys know what I'm talking about, no creative freedom, and bad comms. If you're not going to remember anything that I say today, take a picture of this screen right now. Creatives' minds thrive in environments where they feel valued, understood, and free to explore without fear or immediate critique. I don't know how to say her name, Neri Kara Silliman from Harvard Business Review. I read this and it resonated with me. It's something that I really appreciate both as a leader and as a creative. What can we do to make an environment where a creative feels valued, they feel understood, they feel free to explore without a fear of immediate critique? Well, first of all, those horses, we need to care for them, right? And before you worry about creativity, you need to take care of your people. So the best way you can take care of a person, show them the money. Now that sounds simple. That sounds sometimes even a bit silly. But there is not really anything you can do more to show your respect, to show the value of a person than paying them what they're worth. Do you agree? Well, you agree, you're all underpaid, so. But compensation is at the top of the list. Because when you're not being valued, it's really hard to give 100% to creativity, right? Because you start thinking, well, where can I go that I could be valued? Where could I be paid what I'm worth? So this is maybe one of the biggest problems, I think, when it comes to managing creatives. I don't think that they understand the importance of this. And I'm like, how can you not understand the importance of paying your employees what they're worth? Well, let's talk about it. If you guys have looked at the salary survey before, here's a QR code if you want to jump to it. We do it every year at the UPAA. And it's very valuable data because we actually get real feedback from university photographers across the country about what they're being paid, what their job situation is, and that data is so valuable. Here's just a quick graph of the salary survey. So before we dive too deep into it, I do want to mention two things. First of all, there's a problem with the data. Here on the low end, the lowest end, it's $30,000. It seems like it's not very many people are being paid, right? Wrong. One of the things you have to take into account is if a university is paying their photographer $30,000, do you think they're paying for them to come to Symposium? No. So it's an underrepresented side of this data. In fact, I think it's much higher, the people on the low end of the scale. And on the high end of the scale, it seems like, wow, there's a lot of people making 90 grand. Well, it's 90 and above, right? And the thing about that is pretty much anybody that's making 90,000 or above, they're management. So the data, what we need to really think about is this. The median salary of a photographer, videographer on campus, $55,000. Here's the problem. It's the same that an administrative assistant makes on campus. And both are being undervalued. Now, I love administrative assistants. I'm married to an office manager. My wife is amazing. You would never ask her to photograph the president, right? That's a very specialized skill that only a few people have. We should be compensated for that. The amount of training and experience that it takes to be a high-level creative at a university should be valued. Also, another thing that the data shows is entry-level starting salary is under $40K. I think my breakfast cost $30K this morning. It's really hard to make a living at that level. And then finally, again, those with leadership roles, they have the highest compensation, which is important. We'll talk about it a lot later. So pay them what they're worth. A lot of this comes down to HR. There is a problem in HR and you got to fix it. So we were very fortunate to be able to hire a third photographer a couple years ago, Aaron. And before we started the process, we sat down with our HR rep, we took him to lunch, and we says, hey, traditionally photographers are not really compensated very well. What can we do as we're working on this job description to really make it stand out, to get compensation up a little bit? And his advice was very helpful. One of the things, play the title game. If you want to be paid less money, have your title be photographer. And I don't know why that is, but if you're a plumber, you're making a heck of a lot more money on your campus. So we are really creative with our job descriptions. Aaron's job description is studio manager. Nate's job description is manager of university photography. My description is director of visual communications. Now, what does that even mean? I'm really good at hand gestures, really. But it's meaningless. But the title is so important. It's the most important thing when it comes to the actual salary that comes out of it. So work with your HR, change your titles. It will help. And it shouldn't be this way, but it is this way. Let's deal with the reality of it. Next, update those job descriptions as much as you can. Carrie was really good about every 2 or 3 years. We'd sit down and say, okay, what has changed? What roles have you taken on? For example, social media management has become a bigger and bigger part of my job. So we added that to my job description. Pay went up. If your bosses if you're a good boss, you're going to be looking at those job descriptions, constantly working on them, finding ways to help your people get paid. Another thing, of course, put people in a position where they can be a management role. Managers are paid more, right? And I know what people are saying, but we don't have management roles. This photographer position has no management roles. Everybody manages something. One of the ways that you can be a manager is put student employees under them. Then all of a sudden they're managing, right? And that's a way that you can get the job level to go up. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink real quick. Okay, letting them lead. First of all, we need to encourage professional development. Why is professional development important to you guys? Raise your hand.
It makes me feel valued that they actually care about not only about the work that I produce, but the knowledge that I have to help continue producing great work.
I love that. It tells you as a photographer or a videographer, I value what you're doing. And in fact, I want to help you be even more successful. So here's some money to go to this conference and do that. So I think it's really important that you do encourage professional development and that you also, when you guys that come to professional development, you go back and you talk it up. It's a really good idea to write an email when you get home this weekend or next Monday and say, here's the bullet points of things I learned. Here's things I'd like to maybe implement in our office. Here's some changes I could make a suggestion for. That's great. A manager loves that. That means that it was a valuable experience. Another thing, of course, is make sure that photographers, videographers represented in meetings. How many love meetings in here? Just me, huh? That is a problem, guys. They are so valuable.
Can we say depends on the meeting?
Depends on the meeting? Yes, you could say depends on the meeting. Never. No, there is. Meetings are extremely important because that's where decisions get made. And if you're not in the room when the decision's made, you have no influence on the decision. That's it. So if you want to lead, you got to be involved in those meetings. I remember I had a project come to me. The campus department's like, hey, we got this idea. We're going to do this. And they didn't tell me what it was. They're like, hey, we'll show up. We'll bring models. We have the sketch. We have everything. Don't worry about it. So they show up to the studio. And they showed me the sketch of what they wanted to happen. And I said no. And they're like, Jaren, what do you mean no? You always say yes. And I'm like, that is impossible to shoot because of the laws of physics, right? They didn't understand. They didn't realize that. So we had to pivot. We had to adjust. We had to make. But if I was involved in the meeting, in the planning process, we would have never been in that situation. It's really important for people that understand the visuals to be part of the decisions that are going to be visual. So you need to work your way into those meetings. And finally, give them a path for growth. I have a really good friend who's a photographer at a small university, has come on and done an amazing job. The first photographer that university hired has upped the visual identity of the university, made stock galleries, been amazing. And he's at the point now where he's like, hey, I want to grow. I would like to have a management opportunity. So he wrote up a job proposal. Here's how we could organize the department so that I could have some roles of leadership. Presented it to his bosses, and they said no. And there was no alternative. There was no, well, it's about this, or let's work on that. It was just a flat no. So I just don't understand, like, what kind of dysfunctional organization would just chase away their best talent? Oh, too soon? But the Lakers fans are pretty happy about it, right? But isn't that what we're talking about? How many of you have seen that happen at your university, where some of your best talent's been chased away because management didn't work with them? Yep. See, you know. What a waste. What a waste. Could have had Luca, right? So anyway, the point being, work with your people. Help them. People want to grow. You don't want to take a job and have the exact same job 30 years later. You want to grow. You want to change. You want to blossom, right? So give people a path to do that. Give them a way to do it. Next thing is equipment. Equipment is a touchy subject, right? Because we live in a profession that takes a lot of money to make work. You can only do so much with your iPhone, right? My dad's a contractor. I grew up in construction. We remodeled homes. And my dad, one of the things that he hammered into me was this notion that it's the right tool for the right job. If you have the right tool, it will save you time and make a less messy result. And it's the same with what we do. If you have the right tool, you're going to have a better result in less time. The worst phrase in university photography is this. What does it mean? BYOC. Oh my gosh, the fact that you guys all knew that, bring your own camera, is bad, right? Can you imagine this? A university hires an accountant, and they come in for their final HR training, and they're like, oh, we're so grateful to have you here at this university. You're going to do a great work. Oh, by the way, one more thing. Could you bring your own laptop? And if you had a license for Excel, that'd be great. How insulting is that? It happens all the time. Universities look at the amount of money that equipment costs and just say, oh, we want the images, we just don't want the responsibility that comes with them. That cannot be. If you're in a situation where you have to bring your own camera, stop. And make sure that they're paying you at least a rental fee every year or whatever for that equipment. It's super expensive and you're not being compensated enough to buy that equipment. But honestly, if they want a professional result, they need to buy professional equipment. That's something you have to fight for. And I also believe that it's important that you have an equipment budget that's on your own. Because how many of you have control of your own budget? See how few people that is? One of my friends, he worked at a place where anytime he needed anything, he had to go ask his boss for permission, and so the boss had to go buy it at B&H or wherever, right? A $15 piece of cord every single time. That gets demoralizing, and people just stopped asking. And if people are demoralized and they're not asking for help to improve their situation, you're going in the wrong direction. So I think it's much easier as a manager. Give your people a budget. They'll know I got $25,000 for the year. I'm going to spend, and when those 25 are gone, it's gone. They'll manage it. They'll be fine. And then you as a manager don't have to even manage it. Let them be in charge. They know what they need. Let them do their thing. The same friend told me about this story that he went on a road trip, and the boss, he came back from a road trip. The boss is like, oh, I'm so glad you're back. I had to spend some emergency money. I had to spend it by Friday. So I just went ahead and I bought you 250 millimeter lenses. And without asking him, without telling him, without consulting with him. And I'm like, the boss doesn't really understand. If you screw those two together, it does not make 100 millimeters. You can do nothing with 250s, right? So if the photographer had a say, if they had a piece of the part of the conversation, they would have bought what they actually needed. Also props. We buy a lot of props. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
For the creative standalone budget,
Yeah.
logistically,
Yeah.
are you giving them a credit card? Are you giving them, like that's where I think a lot of the hang up is. So how do you logistically give someone the ability to spend money without going through the purchasing process?
Okay, so the question is how do you give somebody the ability to use their budget without giving them control of the credit card or the... I think they can still make the decisions even if you have the credit card. I think you can figure it out, right? Because again, controller-wise, there's a lot of different ways that a university set up, and maybe they're not allowed to have the credit card. Why don't you just change that, though? Give them control. That's a management thing. Let them do it. In our department, I manage it, right? And my people come to me and says, Jaren, I think we need this or we could use that, and I buy it. But we're our own photo department. I think it depends on your situation. Find a way, though. Find a way to take away the pain, is what I'm saying. Let them make a decision and don't say, hey, that's silly, that's stupid. They can choose the equipment that they need. So does that answer your question? Find a way. And if at your university it ends up you having to use the credit card and pay for it, that's fine as long as they're making the decisions about what they need. So, good. Any other questions about that? Yes?
Do you give purchase control to students?
No, that would be hard. But students can come to me and say, could we buy this? Which is more than most students get. And I will take pitches. In December, Santa comes around. I'm Santa. And I say, okay, guys, what do you think would be good for us to purchase? We have a little bit of money. I always save some money at the end of the year for those things that kind of like bigger purchases I try to save for. Or, you know, oh, we're running out of this supply, so let's stock up on this supply. So I think equipment is really important. I'm just so grateful that we have control of our budget and nobody else does. Be flexible. I think, again, creative people working in a very strict organization struggle sometimes. I heard a story about a photographer that, you know, they're shooting sunrises, they're shooting sunsets, they're shooting events over the weekend, but their boss is like, hey, in this office, everybody shows up at 9 and we leave at 5. I don't care if you were out last night. How ridiculous is that? Because when that boss is there sipping his latte, we're out in our knees in the grass that's wet shooting sunrise. You need to give photographers, videographers, give them some freedom to schedule their own time. They're going to find, my boss, one thing she always told me, she's like, Jaren, I'm never worried you're going to work 40 hours. You're always going to work 40 hours. I just don't, I trust you, do your thing. And if I'm gone for a whole week and I come home and I decide to take a day off, nobody questions it because I have that freedom to do that. That's so free and that's so liberating. You need to be flexible with schedule, especially with schedule, because we work a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings, a lot of weird hours. So make sure that you're being given the opportunity to get that recharge time, to be with your family, because you have to find some balance too. Another thing, and with administrative support, what I mean about that is if you give that budget to the photography staff, it doesn't mean they have to make the purchase. Give them an administrative assistant to help them do the paperwork. That's even better when you can say, buy that, and then they don't have to file all the paperwork. That's great. But there's ways to support them and make it so that they take away the pain. I want my photographers out shooting, not filing reports. Okay. Another thing that we probably need to work on more is flexible workspaces. People that are introverts prefer to have maybe an office environment where they can close the door and they can focus on a project. That's how I am. I have other people in my department that would much rather work in an open office environment so they can constantly interact with other people. Why not give people a choice and let them choose which environment they'd be more successful in? Let's be a little bit more sensitive to that. Because, you know, it's really funny, we can expect a videographer who's working on this project to be in a brightly lit room with people constantly walking around where they're trying to listen to audio and do color adjustment. That just doesn't make any sense. You've got to adapt to what their needs are. And a campus planner doesn't get that. For example, many of you came last year to our office. One of the decisions I made that drove people crazy was this. We have a color in the building. It's brown. That's our color. It's awful. And I said, no. In our office, everything needs to be neutral. The carpet's gray, the cabinets, the chairs, everything is gray. Our lighting is LED lighting, daylight balanced. And they're like, why do you want these weird things? And I'm like, well, when we're editing photos, color cast is a big issue. So we need to have the ability to have the environment be totally neutral and to be able to change our lighting and turn it off if we need to, or close the blinds. And that was just a requirement to help us be more successful. It took some time, but it's been a very helpful thing for us to have that environment. Another thing is you need to be an advocate. A great boss will encourage their visual creatives to enter competitions. Because when you're doing that, you're saying, I think your work is great. You should share it with other people. You should be recognized for it. That's awesome. I will pay for you to enter the $50 million that case entries cost, right? That's validating to a creative. And then on your campus, you need to recognize excellence yourself. My boss, Carrie, always sent in our people for awards on campus. Always. She was constantly writing, little things, and I was able to receive many awards because she submitted my name. And that told me that she valued what I was doing, and I was grateful for that, and it made me feel valued. Finally, I think as a boss, one thing that you can do is enjoy the creative process. It is a beautiful process, right? Anybody remember that TV show, American Choppers? Where they had Orange County Choppers? It was a reality TV show back in the day, and they made motorcycles, custom motorcycles. Now, I'm not a motorcycle guy, as you can tell. I don't fabricate, I don't ride, but I loved watching that show because of the creative process. It showed how they went from an idea to a reality. It showed how they ran into problems and how they adapted to those problems. I love the creative process. And if my boss is watching our creative process as we come from an idea to a finished product, she's a fan and she loves that. And that's, again, for me, it's very validating. So be a fan. Doesn't mean you need to tell them what to do. It means you can just applaud and pat them on the back when they need it. So invest in creativity. That's my main point. If you want creatives to be successful, invest in them, invest in the process, invest in what they're doing. But then comes feeding time. And this is what everybody thought we were going to talk about, protein intake for photographers. But feeding is much more than that. A part of your job as a manager is to communicate how their work fits into the goals of the larger team or organization. While you don't have to hold their hands throughout the journey, you should make sure they're clear about the destination. That includes what you expect to be delivered, by when, if there's a strict deadline, and the impact that the work is making for the company. For me, I call it building a sandbox. When I was a kid, me and my brother are a year apart, and we loved building forts for our G.I. Joes. And my poor dad's lawn just had holes in it everywhere. As we're building forts and tunnels and rivers and putting water in it. And he says, he finally got fed up. He's like, enough. So he's a contractor. He came home with some wood, and he built a 10 by 10 sandbox. And he loaded thousands of pounds of sand in it, and he pointed to it and says, that's your playground. Whatever you want to do inside that sandbox, that's fine. So me and my brother did that. Now, AI thinks that me and my brother had tattoos on our faces. I don't know why. It's pretty hardcore, though. But we took our G.I. Joes in that sandbox, and we made forts, and we made lakes, and we drowned those G.I. Joes. Those G.I. Joes really went through a lot. They traumatic, really. But that was our place that we could play and be creative, and nobody yelled at us ever for what happened in the sandbox. And I think when it comes to a campus, as a manager, you need to build a sandbox. You need to build this. You need to be able to set the parameters of what a project is and say, this is where we're going to be able to play in. And then let them play in that sandbox. So let's talk about that. The most important thing a manager can do to start a conversation of a project is this. Determine the end result. This does not happen enough on a campus. This does not happen anywhere, right? Like, often we says, okay, it's the annual project for X, Y, and Z. Let's do it. What are we trying to accomplish? Because if you know what you're trying to accomplish, it's so much easier to get there. It sets the parameters. It builds that sandbox. So be very clear about, here are the parameters of the project. Here's the budget. Here's what we want to happen. Just be very clear in building that sandbox. Also, again, talking about the scope of the project, what kind of tone are you're thinking about, the budget, and especially the deadline. Now, I don't love deadlines because they make me work, right? But I need deadlines because then they make me work. So having a deadline is really important, as long as it's reasonable. An unreasonable deadline, well, that's a different story. We'll talk about that. Once you've built that sandbox as a manager, let them cook. Sorry, I have teenagers. This is the only way I know how to talk now. But let them cook. Let them do their thing. That's the creative part. I think there's a big difference between a collaboration and a committee. A collaborative process is great. A flat structure that is not directed from the top down can reveal a lot of smart ideas from people that normally would not have the chance to speak up. It also helps ideas to flourish, as ownership of ideas is treated loosely and everyone can contribute and make it better. But often, collaboration gets confused with committees. Anybody been on one of those committees before? Oh, they're fun, right? Let's talk about those. A collaborative process does not mean decisions have to be made as a group, as ideas are not getting better the more people that see their part being integrated. When collaboration becomes a committee, ideas often become average and safe rather than outstanding and disruptive, because committees lead to compromise. So there's a fine line to walk there between a collaboration and a committee. So I'll just tell you about kind of the way we look at it. First of all, yes, sir. Oh, yeah, sure, right here. Snap away. I'm going to take a drink of water. You think as humid as it is here in Tennessee, I would never need to drink water again, but yeah. When we brainstorm, there's a few guidelines that we have. First of all, there's no bad ideas. In fact, I think that's really important because sometimes the bad ideas are the funniest ones. And that's important because it keeps the meeting light, and it sometimes will lead to an actual good idea. So have fun with it. we also don't get caught up on just one idea. I think it's a bad idea to, like, from the very beginning, this is our idea. Because sometimes you go down the path of the idea and it doesn't work. So it's always good to have a few ideas. And finally, the boss should always go last. Because once the boss speaks, the ideas stop, right? So it may be even better the boss doesn't talk at all. Once they've built that sandbox, here's the parameters, back off. Let them cook. What the boss can do is they can kind of refine and redirect. So if people are going outside the sandbox, maybe you need to kind of get them back in. But in the end, the best idea should win, not the biggest ego. And that's, as a manager, that's really a tough skill to have, but it is something you have to develop. And that's very soft hands to help manage those types of things. And again, I mentioned have a couple ideas, not just one, and then let them cook. So here's how our meetings would work. We have a content meeting for university communications. And in that meeting, we only have photographers, videographers, writers, and social media managers. Our boss is not there. We didn't invite her. Because these are the people that actually need to be involved in the part of the project, okay? And it's a fun meeting. It's very light. It's every week for 30 minutes before our full staff meeting. And we talk about 4 to 6 weeks ahead. That's key. How many of you talk that far ahead in your projects? Oh, a few. That's really good. The reason for that is creativity takes time. And if I have a month to think about a shot, it's going to be way better than if I have an hour. So why not talk about things that are 6 weeks out and give your people time to be creative? Again, the goal of our meetings are to spark creative ideas, not make final decisions. And the creatives are the ones that make the decisions, not the bosses. In the end, photography, videography, we choose the path we're going to go. Now, the writers, the social media managers, they will give us feedback. They're like, well, actually, that might not be a good idea, but we have the final say because we're the creatives. So in action, let's show that. We had this research study that shows that sugar consumed through beverages like soda is consistently linked to a higher risk of developing diabetes than just normal sugar, which is really interesting. I think it's common sense, but it's also like, drinking that soda is worse than eating it in a brownie. So we were like, okay, well, we want to highlight this research. What kind of ideas could we have? And we kind of kicked around some ideas. And Aaron Cornea, our new employee, had an idea. Now, here's the problem with Aaron. He's not here, so I can talk about him freely. When he has an idea, it costs me money. So it's like, Jaren, I have this idea. What if, like, we are pouring sugar into a human? And I'm like, you're doing it right now. You're drinking soda. And he's like, no. Let's get like a mannequin, like a body, and we'll pour sugar on top of it, and I'll do something cool with it. And I'm like, all right, let me go to Amazon. So I go to Amazon and I buy it. Our poor controllers, they must look at our purchase and say, they just bought 25 pounds of sugar and a flexible human mold. Like, what is wrong with those people down there, right? And it's a lot. There's a lot wrong. But you guys have seen the image, right? It's just, it's very simple. It's a little flexible mannequin that sugar gets stuck in. It's like gummy almost. And they poured sugar over it, did a cool thing. It turned out great. Very creative idea, much different than just a professor smiling, right? It did a great job of promoting the story. But it happened because he had time and space to be creative. So in giving them space, I think it's really important to just, bosses, sometimes they just get in your face, right? They want to be in control of everything. They want to make sure everything's good, and they get a little, just back off, let people do their thing. I get asked this a lot. You know, it's a management that doesn't go out and create, they don't understand what it takes to make something, right? The question I love is, how long does it take to capture a sunrise? Don't you just push the button, right? Well, let me show you. We're working on a project right now. It's the 150th anniversary of BYU this year. So we've been working on a project to create content to be used in the promotion of that project. It starts in September, so we've been doing it all spring. And spring, if you haven't been to Utah in spring, it is beautiful. Summer, not so much. So come in the spring, it's great. But I went out and I've been focusing on a lot of this content we could use. So here's just some examples of the photos I've been capturing. You know, beautiful blossoms, students walking from the dorms, guy working on campus, cleaning campus for something or other. Another beautiful sunrise tree shot. And this is our new arts building. It's under construction. Really nice to kind of show the progress of that building. Just kind of more kind of generic stock that we can put copy over here. It's easy to work with. Anybody work with these magnolias? They're so hard, they just want to die. Like if the temperature drops 1 degree, they just fall. So you have to shoot them while they're there. A class coming across the campus, beautiful flower in front of our most iconic building. How long did it take to create that? How do you explain to a boss how long it took to create those pictures? Isn't that difficult? I did all of those pictures in 57 minutes. Is that normal? No, now guys, they're not award-winning pictures. They're serviceable for what we need. But I shot them in 1 hour. And a boss might look at that and say, oh man, why do you need so much time? Look what you could do in an hour. Well, what the boss doesn't understand is when you walk out and a snowstorm starts, or the clouds smother your sunrise, or a stupid crane is in the background of every stinking photo, or they're painting the curb, or the worst is campus service vehicles are everywhere all the time, right? Like, how on earth are we supposed to take pictures of anything besides trucks? All those times I went out and failed led to the time that I was successful, when all the conditions lined up and I knew exactly where I needed to go, the shots I needed to get in 1 hour. So it's really hard to quantify creativity. And that's a very hard concept to explain to somebody. But it's hard to quantify creativity. Now you can quantify the amount of hours you're shooting and the frames you shot and how they're used and all that kind of stuff. But you need to, as a boss, needs to give people space to be creative. It takes time. Those beautiful sunrises don't happen every day. They just happen. And when they happen, you need to be ready to go get them. So in giving them space, just remember the creative process is not linear. And sometimes those ideas need time and space to evolve. Also, don't overload your people. Prioritize. Because if you're giving them too much work, they're not going to be creative. They're not capable of being creative. They're just trying to get the work done. So it'd be very important as a manager of creatives to lock in and say, okay, this is what we have to focus on right now. And all that other stuff, give to the student photographers, send to freelancers, or say no. But you need to reprioritize constantly what your visual priorities are on your campus. Also, be okay with failure. Failure is important. In fact, you need to learn how to fail forward. And let's show that example. Aaron came to me again and said I had an idea. And it was expensive. And he's like, hey, I wanted to take a picture of like a guy holding a glowing basketball. I think that'd be so cool and we could use it for our marketing for basketball, whatever. Nobody was asking for this. It was just an idea Aaron had. But I'm like trying to be supportive and I'm like, okay, let's figure it out. How are we gonna do it? He's like, well, there's this reflective basketball. It's like a painted court, like a thing, and you can buy it and throw a light on it, it's reflective. So he went and bought one, and that's what it looked like, which he's looking at. We tested it and we're like, no, you have to throw so much light on the basketball, you can't control the light that's on the subject. It's just not what we were going for. So he's like, oh, well, that didn't work. Did I yell at Aaron? No. That's okay. It happens. He came to me a couple days later with another idea. And yes, it was expensive. He said, Jaren, I had an idea. What if instead of buying a reflective basketball, we just buy a $10 light fixture? Where'd it go? So he went and bought this little light fixture, and we stuck an A1 in, or A2 in it. And when you do that, the ball glows. And when you do it right, it makes a fun image. But we would have never got to this if I would have shut him down after the failure. That's the point. That's the creative process right there. It's not idea success. It's usually an evolution and windy path, and you need to give people time to wind down that path. Again, if you're going to remember anything, it's this. Creative minds thrive in environments where they feel valued, understood, and free to explore without fear of immediate critique. Let me just show you my personal story of that experience. A few years ago, the football team came to me and says, Jaren, we have this new helmet. It's a royal blue helmet, but it's shiny. We've never had it before. We'd love to do something cool with it. What are your ideas? And we're talking like 3-4 months ahead of time. So I'm like, okay, well, let me think about it. And I've always had this idea of, what if we sent an athlete through a piece of glass and it just explodes and there's flying glass everywhere. And they looked at me and they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. Can you make it work? What do you need? And that was so cool. They're like, it was a weird idea. And they weren't sure it would work, but they gave me space and they gave me budget to try it out. So here's what I did. I went and I tried to figure out how to do it safely because you don't want to kill any athletes. It's bad. Very quickly we're like, well, we're not doing real glass. What if we did ice? But to get an ice block tall enough for an athlete to run through, it's super heavy, it's hard to control, it melts everywhere. And a guy that I work with at in the culinary department is like, why don't you just do sugar glass? I'm like, What? He's like, in a movie, when like a guy breaks a bottle over somebody's head, that's not glass. It's sugar glass. It's Karo syrup and sugar heated up, and it cools down. It looks like glass. And when it breaks, it's not sharp. So we tried it out. I went and I got a recipe on the internet. I found my dumbest student, and he broke it over his head. Looked amazing, right? By the way, here's just, I forgot this slide. Here's the budget. We had a couple month deadline. We couldn't talk about it. But they wanted to have a lot of play from this idea. So we broke it on his head, and then this is where things got weird. And I started what I like to call the Mormon version of Breaking Bad. Where I went to my poor wife's kitchen, and I started cooking up sugar and Karo syrup, and I poured it into these giant 4x5 sheet molds, and we transported it to the studio, and I had to be the first one to test it out because safety, right? I didn't have a football helmet, so I put a baseball helmet on and some safety glasses. And it was the coolest experience because you're running through it, and it's like you're running into a wall, your mind's saying, stop, 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 and your body's going like, no, we should do this. And then you hit it, and it's like hitting drywall, but it's wet drywall, so it explodes, and then you hear this explosion in your head, and it was awesome. And all the people from the athletic department that came down, they watched, they're like, okay, let's do it. So we made 5 sheets. This is the studio setup we had. Here's the rig where we put the glass on. They run through it. Here's a phantom camera. Here's my camera. Here's another camera. Here's another camera, another camera. And we got ready to do it. Setting this up is very dangerous because it's not going to hurt you. It's just so fragile. It wants to break. So here, let me show you. We'll turn off the light so you can see this. Let me show you what it ended up being.
Okay.
So come over here. I need to do some focus tests. So come on over. Ryan, are you ready to go? 3, 2, 1, go. Good. I think it was. That's nice though. That's nice. If anything, just a hair up on the chin. Just a hair. Mm-hmm. But I love seeing the laces on the ball. Yes, sir. And yeah, go ahead and just hand underneath the tuck.
Yeah, I like with both hands.
Okay.
That was good.
Guys, ready to do it for real? The same thing. We're going to pick up the plywood, gently set it on this edge, and very slowly come up.
Okay. Slide it over towards me.
Okay, very slowly, very slowly. Okay, everybody, get in position. 3, 2, 1, go. Woo! Yeah! All right, look at that.
Big out. Yes, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that looks so
That's
good.
beautiful. It just shatters. That's
Let's
beautiful.
go. That was nice.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Loving it, man. Loving it.
What do you think of the photos?
It's gonna be hard not to share, but I'll find a way.
It broke.
Even though it's sugar glass, it's crazy. It's crazy. This is different though.
Go. Let's go. Hey, hold on. This is the problem. Sugar everywhere. So I set up my Canon R3. It fired 50 raw frames in a quarter second and got the exact image that I was going for. This is us as we watched the slow-mo footage come through the camera for the first time. I was so relieved because I put so much into this. Here's the image, how it turned out on Instagram. Here's what the social media looked like. Here's how my favorite image looks. And I'm just so grateful that it worked out the way I mean, guys, I never worked as hard on a project as I worked on this project. And it was crazy, but I was so invigorated because people let me be creative and gave me the space and gave me the support, and we got something really awesome out of it. So when it comes down to it, the main thing I want to leave you with is if you manage creatives, lead them. Don't just manage them. Find a way to help them to reach their full potential. Now, if you are not if you're just a creative, and don't ever say you're just a creative. If you're a creative on your campus, lead. Because you do not need a title to lead. You do not need to be asked to lead. You step up and you lead. You support other people, you love them. You model the way that you should treat other people in your department and lead. And please step up into leadership roles. Ask to move forward. Because you give up the right to complain if you're not willing to lead. And we need you guys to lead on your campuses so that we can make it better for all of us. Thank you. Few minutes for questions.
Can you give this presentation to my VP?
Send him my way. I'll talk to him. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about deadlines when you're leading students and other people, missing deadlines for whatever myriad of reasons. How do you feel?
So the question is, how do you deal with deadlines? So if people miss deadlines, how do I deal with that?
A lot of times we get like assignments where they don't have like, it's not a
Yeah.
deadline or anything. It's like, they're just happy to get the photos or whatever.
So if the client doesn't have a deadline, I still do. And I think it's important to teach. I'm trying to teach my students how to be professionals. So for example, a sporting event next day is turnaround is our standard. If we shoot it on the weekend, Tuesday morning is our standard. And that's just helpful because we can clear the decks and move to the next thing. But I do think as far as setting deadlines when you don't have one, just make sure they're realistic. Because too far out, it's not very helpful. Too soon, not very helpful. Find a way to make it so that there's enough time to be creative, but also still make progress. So that's a great question. What else?
I feel sometimes that, like maybe our social media team or other people, they don't do that planning ahead, so then because of their lack of planning, then they like to
Yeah.
go back on the photographers to come up with something, and I like to be a yes person.
Yeah.
Do that, but I think sometimes they're just flat or they're not great because we didn't have that space. So do you say no, or do you, like, how do you navigate their lack of planning?
Okay, so that's a great question. How do you navigate when other people lack of planning? You don't make excuses, you make change. So then you invite them to your meeting and say, we're working on our 3-month calendar or our 1-month calendar. Let's start talking about it now. And maybe they leave that meeting and you have no ideas what they're talking about. But at least you're setting the example of how we should be working. And they need to understand that you're going to give them a better product if you have time to work on it. And when you start giving them that better product and they see the result, they will start planning ahead. But find a way to take control, to be a leader and take control of that situation. And if they don't, then start coming up with your own ideas. Says, well, we were thinking of this. Would this work for your campaign? And then if they don't have to do any of the work, that's awesome, right? You could do it all. So that's a great question.
I'm going to funnel through this a little bit.
Yes.
How often are you updating your brand consistency style of photography so you don't feel dated? So, like we want to try new things, but it's not necessarily in brand.
Yeah.
And we can do it, but then it kind of loses, it doesn't become the brand.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? How often are you looking at how to move creativity and move a legal style?
So here's the thing. And the question for those that didn't hear it is how do you be creative without going outside of the brand guidelines? The brand guidelines are fluid. It grows. It changes.
I think my question was more like when you are creative, but that doesn't become the brand guideline. Like,
Oh, so not making it. So
you want to push something and become more creative, but it isn't accepted, or it's like yay, 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 but it doesn't actually make it into the new standard.
Well, if it doesn't make it in the new standard, that's okay. We're finding a use for it. It doesn't necessarily have to fit the brand for all of our projects, but we really are the ones that create our brand. So a lot of times we're just expanding our brand or evolving our brand, and we're constantly updating. And our brand, I feel like, does keep evolving. There's some kind of core standards, but a great picture it'll find a way to be used well, and that's really what it comes down to. If I can create great images, it's going to benefit everybody. So I'd love to talk to you more about that because that's an interesting point. Yes.
So you start off like as creative, and then you have that trouble when you become a leader. Yeah, as you like made your way into leadership, do you still like do outside creative stuff, or do you feel like just becoming a mentor to like younger photographers, does that feed your creativity?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you walk that line?
Yeah,
of personal projects and creativity versus managing and mentoring. I still shoot. I shoot less, but I still shoot. And I'm a little more selective about what I shoot to make sure that it helps me scratch my creative itch. But I also have learned as a leader, a great leader doesn't just hoard the best stuff. They make sure that the great projects go to everybody and distribute them out. So that's an interesting quandary. I think I'm creating projects more than taking other people's projects because they're a little bit more fluid on the timeline and I can fit them into my schedule. But I'm still shooting and I'm still trying to be creative because if I'm not being creative, how can I help my students be creative? I have to be a creative person too.
Seems like this is a growing thing where you kind of have to like keep your foot in
Yeah.
a bit to like kind of see where things are going. But
Yeah.
do you have a problem with that?
I mean, it's a constant problem. And I'm aware of it, which is why I'm constantly forcing myself to still do things. I'm not shooting as much as I'd like, but I'm shooting enough that I still have a say. I still am part of the creative process, and I think that I also have the respect of my employees because they know I can still do it. But if I just locked myself into meetings, I mean, I would lose touch really quickly, right? So that's a great question. Anybody else? I think that's our last one. Yes.
Yeah, how do you deal with when you're not getting what you want out of it? Say you have like a student worker, how do you coach them, then ride that line between not discouraging them,
Okay.
but getting what you want?
A lot of it's feedback. With a student that is struggling, we have a lecture a couple years ago about how we deal with our students, and we talk a lot about that. But there is a constant feedback cycle. The first year they work for us, every shoot we sit down and go through with them. And we look at the shoot, and we don't just say, this stinks, this stinks, this stinks. We're like, this is great. I love this idea. Maybe you could do this. And we try to make sure that they leave with a couple of good feedback and a couple of suggestions for improvement, and then we follow up and follow up and follow up. They know that we are taking time out of our day to sit with them and go through their photos. They know we love them. And once they know that, it's not a problem. They turn it up and they figure it out. And it's so fun to watch that process of the first year especially because they take ownership of their photography. They stop making excuses and they want to be better. And that makes all of us better. So thank you. Great question. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.